Okay, for those of you who are watching this, we had another stream going that was going very well, and then it just shot me out. Nothing, don't know what, the app shut down. I guess it's my phone, I don't know. So I apologize. I am going to give a few minutes for everyone who wants to, from the other stream, to come over here. And then we will get back on track. But we lost all that. Well, I've still got the chat, so I can still go through it. Needle of Lear was there. Circle of Mayhem, buffering it, death roll. Okay, so let me go. I figure there's enough of you here now. I am not in, right now I'm in the old chat. I'm not in the new chat yet, so I'll catch up with the new chat when I switch over. Actually, you know what? I'm just gonna dump this chat. Let me go to the new chat. Let me finish my thought about the AR-10 versus the FAL though. Now, the AR-10 has had, what is it, 50, 60 years of development since back then, and the FAL has not. The FAL was made and designed, and it pretty much, so like when they first designed and made the FAL, it had wood furniture, and later on they added some, you know, fiberglass or polymer, whatever it is, plastic furniture. It didn't do it again, did it? So there has been, you know, small improvements over time, but the basic design has stayed the same. The very few improvements made to the FAL over the years. And the AR-10 went into pretty much constant, driven by the AR-15, but the AR-10 went into a constant series of improvements and upgrades and development. So, you know, maybe when I think about AR-10 today and compare it to FAL, you know, maybe back then, back in the 50s, that gap wasn't as wide. But the AR-10 today versus the FAL is not even close. I mean, it's a great weapon. The AR-10 is a great weapon. It's not that the FAL is completely incompetent and won't kill someone if you shoot them with it. It's just the AR-10 is a better weapon. I would love to hear someone like Ian at Forgotten Weapons, or maybe even In Range TV, but it's a little bit out of Carl's wheelhouse. Military Arms Channel might be able to do it, although he pissed me off recently. No, was it him? One of the other guys pissed me off recently. I've got a pet peeve, man. I've just got a pet peeve, and sure, it's just the era I served, and it's just my brand loyalty. But everyone hates on the M16A2. They just trash it. Oh, the Army. The sights are too complicated. Why would they make the sight so complicated? These are target rifle sights. These are the kind of sights you'd use on a shooting range. They're just, and I kid you not, this is what they're saying, they're just too accurate. That rifle is just too accurate. What? It's too accurate? What the hell, man? I don't get it. The A1 sights were just simple. They were simple. Okay, so don't adjust the A2 sights. I don't get it, and I don't know if it was military. It wasn't military. Maybe it wasn't Military Arms Channel. It might have been one of the other ones. One of the big guys who's a much better shooter than I am, who's a much more knowledgeable about guns than I am. But yeah, he was saying the same thing. These are target rifle sights. They're just too accurate. we fell down to 10 people. That's insanity to me. That's just like, what are you, crazy? Your rifle's too accurate? Is your wife too hot? I mean, I can't use a wife that hot. I'm only a 6 and she's an 8. I don't get it. There's a whole country song about, I ain't never had too much fun, you know, girl too pretty, car too fast, rifle too accurate. And I will be fair to their point of view. What they say is that, well, it's too easy to adjust the sights and throw off your zero. No, it's not. And with just this much training, just this much training, like the bare minimum training you would need, well, tactical homestead is correct. Accuracy is a massively subjective term. Massively subjective term. Is the current live stream not doing well? Someone just texted me and says that it's not doing well. Someone who has my number text me and tell me if we're not getting it. Where was I? Oh, as I say, it's too easy to adjust and lose your zero. But no, it's not too easy to adjust and lose your view. If you're that worried about it, get your zero set. You've got to go out of your way to turn that stinking knob. You know, the only one you really got to worry about is the, thank you, Freedom Dad. Okay, Isaac says it's fine. Thank you, Isaac. The only one you've got to worry about even is that windage knob. And it's just not easy, because if you get the elevation knob off, you know, then you're just too stupid to own a rifle. I'm sorry. But, you know, so if you get that windage knob off a little bit, then yes, thank you, Josh. You can lose your. But if you have, you know, just a modicum of knowledge about your rifle and your zero, you can look at, there's those little hash marks on the back. You're supposed to look and see where your zero's at on that. And if it gets off, you can just go back to that zero. And if you don't like that capability, then don't use that capability. Oh, hey, Jack. Jackie, was that, Jackie, I have lost my phone like 2 times since the last time I had your phone number. So if that was you who just texted me, I'll save your phone number. Where was I? Oh, but, you know, the Marine Corps, we love that site, because our whole thing is, you know, the Army's always got heavy weapons, and they've always got mortars, and even the 82nd, when they parachute in somewhere, they take heavy stuff with them. Well, the Corps doesn't always have that. Sometimes the only thing we have is highly accurate rifle fire. And so then you need, oh, thanks, Jackie, I'm gonna save your number. You need to be able to have that fine adjustment where you can engage point targets out to 500 yards. And that means you have to adjust windage sometimes. And it's a skill set, you know, and it takes some training, but it's a wonderful capability to have. And if you don't want to use that capability, that's fine. Why would you take it away from, why would you do away with it? I mean, what's the point of, I don't know, I just don't get it. All right, let me catch up with the new live stream. Get back on the real chat. Okay. So sorry, all of you who were making really good, Nita Lavalier asked how I liked the trigger, and he asked about, he thought it was a Franklin Armory trigger. Nita Lavalier, if you're here, I have the Fostech, not the Franklin, and I am very happy with it. Well, I'm very happy with it. So, you know, that rifle has dual rolls. Hold on 1 second. So, you know, it's supposed to be a DMR rifle, designated marksman, which means you want to long live the peep sights. Yes, Hunter. You know, you want a good trigger for that DMR roll. But you also, you know, it's got that volume of fire roll where you're laying down, you know, a higher rate of fire with the binary trigger. And so those two things work against each other, you know. The binary trigger makes a really good trigger pull difficult. And, you know, a good trigger pull is a short take up, and then I don't know what the best way to say it. I'm not technical enough, but like a wall. So like you put your finger on the trigger, and there's a little bit of give, and then it stops. So you've got this short take up to that wall, and then a nice crisp break. And then you just apply more pressure, and then you've got a good clean. Well, that's what you want. So this, I'm told, that's what I read. So that Fostech, it's got a good take up, and then you hit that wall, and this is gonna sound weird, but it feels like the trigger goes a little bit back and to the right when you pull. It's like it's a little bit of an angle. And it's not like a shallow Niedlevlier. Yeah, I'm glad you heard Niedlevlier. So it's not like this great single shot trigger, but it's at least mil spec, and it's fine. I don't think it would get in the way of making torso shots at 500 yards, and that's all you need for it. Risky Krisky finally started his channel. Give us a link, Risky Krisky, and Isaac will approve it. I think. It took us a long time to get this figured out with Tactical Homestead. I think that'll work. Maybe if it doesn't, maybe Isaac can cut and paste it and do it himself, and maybe he can do the link since he's the moderator. We've got a couple of moderators in here tonight, but Isaac is the go-to man because I can count on him being here. Plus, he usually has Tactical Homestead has the Echo 2 has the weirdest travel ever. It is a little weird, but it's not bad enough to get in the way of, like I said, torso shots at 500 yards. And as long as it can do that, hey Walter Davis, how you doing, sir? That's what I needed to do. I have a rifle out getting a barrel put on it right now. It's the What Would Stoner Do rifle, the KP-15 off of Forgotten Weapons, and it's actually in-range TV. I talk about those two channels a lot because I really like them. So they put together this rifle with like, how would you build a good infantry rifle on the AR-15 system with today's technology? And so I did most of what they did, but I did the trigger a little different. I think they drop a packet trigger in or something. But anyway, I got an improved mil-spec trigger from the company that makes the lower components, KE Arms, and it's almost changed my life. I mean, it was a $50 trigger, so it should have been pretty good. PSA advanced trigger is pretty good over the standard. I am not familiar with that at all, Freedom Dad. Okay, I tell you what, Isaac, we'll talk about Carl and his political opinions here in just a second, because I hear about this a lot and I have thoughts on it. I have thoughts on everything. So just a second, Isaac, if I forget to talk about Carl and his political beliefs. Hey, MI Prepper, we're doing well, sir. How are you? But this trigger is a thing of beauty. And like I said, it's just improved mil spec. I think all it means is that they cleaned up the surfaces on the sear and the travel. Maybe it looks shiny, but it's just, oof. I don't like, especially for that application for an infantry rifle. You don't want a really light trigger. There's a safety factor here. I agree with the mil spec standard that you don't want to go below 5.5 pounds. I don't know what it's chromed. Is that what it is, Freedom Den? I don't know exactly what the pull on that trigger is, how many pounds it is. I don't think it's not unsafe. I've played with it. It's not unsafe. So, but I think it's probably supposed to be like, if I remember correctly, I think they said it was supposed to be 5.5 pounds is I think is what it was they were aiming for. Okay, Tactical Homestead says he can give me some advice on sexing up the binary trigger. I tell you, Tactical Homestead, my email is therevoltingman@outlook.com. Shoot me an email and I will respond back. Okay, so in-range TV and the political beliefs of one Carl Casada. If you watch in-range TV at all, hey Bob Jones, how you doing? Some Flitz polish will clean up a mil-spec trigger nicely. Just got a good rip, lawn, Limwell share. Supply chains and supply issues and possible wartime rationing may affect tire availability. If you think you might need new tires soon, get them now while you can. Interesting observation in my prepper. Isaac just earlier was saying that he was having trouble. He had trouble getting tires for his Jeep. Okay, Carl Casada, In Range TV, and his political beliefs. So most of you probably know the channel Forgotten Weapons. Hey, Chief, get the furnace fixed. Keep us on in the background if you want, but good luck on that. I'm sure you got to get that running before it gets too much colder. Ooh, Bob Jones has been working a ton. I'm sorry to hear that. There ain't no profit in that. Timothy Young needs new tires. So Timothy Young, see if you can't get MI Preppers. Or no, he was just saying that you should get them. He doesn't have a hookup. Sorry, unless MI Prepper you do have a hookup, in which case. Oh no. Oh no. My phone says it's dying. Hold on a second, man. Well, I've got the damn thing plugged in. If it dies, I don't know what I'll do. We'll see. Carl Casada, In Range TV. If you ever watch Forgotten Weapons, and you probably have if you like guns and you watch YouTube, because he's probably the most popular. Well, Demolition Ranch has 6 million subscribers. And I think Hitchcock 45's got a lot of subscribers. And then probably third is going to be Forgotten Weapons, Ian McCullum. Great channel. Really nice, soft-spoken guy. You can tell he's just a nice guy. He also had a channel with this guy named Carl Casada, In Range TV. Some of the best gun content on YouTube, hands down. A shadow of a doubt. In Range TV. I love Forgotten Weapons. But Ian and Carl on In Range together put out some really good gun content. Carl, Ian's this really nice guy. Really nice guy. Carl is a raging asshole. Like, he's on the spectrum somewhere. He's got Asperger's, he's got autism, there's something, ADA, he's just a little off. All right, I got the email, Tactical Homestead. I will respond a little later. He's just a little off. I think, I can't prove this, but I was watching a documentary on polyamory one time, and I swear he was in it, that Carl was in it, as this woman had 2 boyfriends. And I'm almost positive Carl was one of the 2 boyfriends. I didn't watch the channel at the time. It just stuck with me. These 2 guys sharing a woman, which to me sounds, ludicrous. And then I started watching his channel, and I went, that looks like that guy. I don't know for sure, but I think it could be. Anyway, don't hold that against him, because I could be wrong. I'm afraid this phone is going to die. I don't know what's going on here. Technical difficulties. So the rap on Carl is that he is a member of the Church of Satan, which I think he is. I don't think that's that question. I think that's confirmed. He is a member of the Church of Satan. And then he put out some support for Black Lives Matter at the height of the George Floyd lunacy. Yeah, Isaac doesn't like Carl. Ian and Carl together have a great dynamic. It just works. I love their synergy. But anyway, he is a member of the Church of Satan, and Isaac, the Antifa stuff is Ian's wife, who I think is the Antifa supporter. But that heavily implies that Ian himself then is also an Antifa supporter. Warrior Poet Society is good. So Carl is a member of the Church of Satan, but you got to remember the Church of Anton LaVey's Church of Satan. But you got to remember these aren't actual Satanists. They don't believe they're worshiping Satan. It's this protest movement against Christianity. He's an atheist. He's a militant atheist. He doesn't like Christianity. Or it might be Ian's girlfriend, Isaac. That's what I read. That's all I know is what I read. So what I read was that Ian's girlfriend is an Antifa supporter. But I was on an internet forum. I mean, who knows, you know? So Carl is a militant atheist, and oh, maybe it's Carl's girlfriend is. Well, that would make sense because I think she's the one with the two boyfriends. I swear that was them on that polyamory video. I should get on InRange's Patreon just so I can ask the question. If you're a $5 member, you can ask him a question, and I should do it. Carl, were you ever on a polyamory documentary? I swear it was him. So he's a militant atheist. Here's what I like about him, though. First off, he is clearly just an Asperger's kid, so I've got a little bit of sympathy for the man. You know, I mean, you don't want to make fun of the retarded kid, right? The other thing is, though, is that he really has, sounds like a lost cause. He probably is a lost cause native Leary. I don't know that for sure. You don't want to write everything off, but there's a good chance he is a lost cause. But he really has a good concept of the Second Amendment and what it's for. And I heard him talk one time about how the Second Amendment's not about your hunting rifle, and y'all have heard me say that a number of times. I didn't get it from him, but when he said it, it really, you know, obviously resonates with me. And he talked about how the Second Amendment should include things like comms and crypto, encryption technology. That the whole point of the Second Amendment is to allow the people to intimidate the government, you know, and you all heard the phrase, when the government fears the people, there's freedom. When the people fear the government, there's tyranny. And he gets that, and he had ideas about how what it would take to make it happen. Now, I think he comes from a place of he's an anarchist in sort of the classical weird way, and he probably does have some. He might identify with some, you know, he might say something about, you know, I understand the goals of communism. I honestly think he's a libertarian. I think he's a radical libertarian is what it boils down to. So you know, you never throw out I heard an old missionary tell a story one time as a Brazilian guy, talking with an accent. I can't do a Portuguese accent or add to it. But he was talking about, you know, you go down the grocery store and there's all this stuff on the aisles, unless you're going down to the grocery stores right now, in which case the aisles are empty. And he said, there's all this stuff, just thousands and thousands of items in the grocery store. And he's talking about if you don't like something, you can pick it up and look at it and put it back on the shelf. But what you don't do is take it and throw it over the aisle into the aisle next door where you hit somebody's baby and you kill them. You know, Carl's got some really good ideas on the Second Amendment and freedom and what it would take to secure those things in our modern world. And he's got good gun knowledge. You know, take what's good, leave what's bad. Is there a lot of bad there? Yeah, there's a lot of bad there. I am convinced that the only reason why you would share your woman with another man is because you wish the woman wasn't in between the two of you. Yeah, the only reason in my mind that you would ever share a woman with another man is because, you know, it's gay. You just want to have sex with him and you're living vicariously through her. So yeah, there's some bad stuff there. He soup spit out the bones, exactly, Isaac. He doesn't push that stuff on his channel. He talks gun knowledge. So Clancy Russell is an anarchist. I actually am now too, Clancy. I'm just a Christian nationalist anarchist. I'm not an anarchist in the, yeah. So I'm not a true anarchist because I do believe in a certain form of control, a religious control, but a very broad, I mean, you know, confess with your mouth that Jesus Christ is Lord and believe that God raised him from the dead. That's it. You know, that's the control I believe in. Okay, where are we at? Yes, Timothy Young is right. The National Guard Act of 1916 was a dark, dark, dark day for the Republic. Although, well, the whole teens was dark, dark time. We got women voting. We got the Militia Act of 1916. We got the direct election of senators, which was a horrible thing. That's actually what killed states' rights. Let me see what I missed in the... Oh, and then we got Woodrow Wilson, one of the few truly evil men to ever serve. Him and Lyndon Johnson. And possibly FDR. I don't think maybe he was truly evil, though. Woodrow Wilson was truly evil. Okay, where are we at here? Okay, Tactical Homestead likes Grand Thumb and Warrior Poet Society. I don't know Grand Thumb that well. I do watch a lot of Warrior Poets. I wouldn't say a lot of Warrior Poet Society. I watch some, and I like him a lot. Isaac thinks I'm wrong that Carl has a girlfriend and Ian is single. And my prepper says, yes, society is chock full of freaks now. And my prepper also says, Second Amendment is in case we actually have to have another American Revolution if we get another King George III style government, which I would say that King George is rolling over in his grave right now at what we have allowed to go on. It's like, you guys rebelled against me? And Clancy has that anarchist comment. Wes says, hey, Wes, how you doing, bud? Wes has said, if the baby has drowned, throw it out with the bathwater. Okay. Maybe we could give the baby a Christian burial. Oh, Tactical Homestead wants to hear about my Christian nationalist anarchism. Okay, real quick, Tactical Homestead. I won't go into it too much. I probably will end up going into it a lot. So when... I know most people don't have the Anti-Federalist. I am also an Anti-Federalist, Nidavillier. They were right. And I love our Constitution. It's a brilliant document, but the Anti-Federalists were right. We'll see if we can hit that next. Christian nationalist anarchist, when God brought the Hebrew children into the land of Israel, they had a religious structure, a loose religious structure over them. And that was it. And the Bible even tells us every man did that which was right in his own eyes. And God had even actually warned them right before this that the time is going to come when you want a king. You're going to ask me for a king, and when you do, I'm going to give him to you, but it's going to be a bad thing. You won't like it. God's plan, when he set up the only nation he's ever directly set up, although I do believe he has set up others, us for sure, he didn't give them a government. He gave them a militia structure, a very hands-off, unique militia structure. He gave them a very, very thin religious structure. Very, very thin, not much at all. There was a taxation, and then there was some that what we call the tithe, that 10% that doesn't exist in the New Testament. That's based off of the Israelites had to give 10% of their increase to the temple, to the high priest, to keep the temple going. The tabernacle, for a long time it was a tabernacle. They got a king before they got a temple. And that was the system God set up. No government, no king. There was a militia. There was a basic level of religious orthodoxy, small o orthodoxy, that had to be adhered to, and that was it. So I do believe that Christ followers, people who submit themselves to the will of God as expressed in the scriptures, that we should live in societies that have that basic assumption. We should live in places where we're able to say, okay, this is a Christ following, because the word Christian has lost all meaning. That we live in a Christ following society, that if you're not a Christ follower, you can't live here. You can move through. We'll be happy to do business with you, but you can't stay here. We are Christ followers, and this land is dedicated to that. So in that sense, I'm a Christian nationalist. Now here's the problem. A lot of the Christian nationalists are really just raging socialist assholes, and they want to give just astounding amounts of power to whatever government they think is going to defend them from the atheists and the Muslims. Because that's a lot of what's driving the Christian nationalist movement in America today, is fear of the atheists and the Muslims. Neither group can defeat us on their own. One can soften us up, the other can finish the job. So we can't do anything out of fear. We should be doing everything from a position of strength, or to make ourselves strong. Peace only comes through strength. So I don't have a lot of truck with most Christian nationalists because, they're not freedom-loving, small government, small C conservatives. They're people whose faith is important to them, but they want someone else to defend it for them. Okay, so anti-federalist. Those of you who don't know what an anti-federalist was, many of you have probably heard of the Federalist Papers. Back when, the IRS in 1913, that was something else that went bad in the teens, and the Federal Reserve Act of 1913, although those two things might have been linked. I can't remember. I think the IRS was a constitutional amendment, and I think the Federal Reserve was just a law. Could be wrong. Walter Davis has a good point. When laws are bad or ignored, there are no laws. Therefore, I believe to an extent we are all anarchists. I actually go a step farther and say only God can declare a law anyway. So everything else is statutes and administrative regulation. Okay, so the Federalist, Anti-Federalist. So everyone's always talking about, we need a convention of the states. We need a convention of the states and we'll fix this shit. Hey, Mr. Dunnigan is here. Mr. Dunnigan. We were talking about the Israeli Scorpius system earlier. And it's this system where they can shoot a laser and they can, they can defeat electromagnetic systems. Now, I don't know what an electromagnetic system is. Is any system with electricity running through it, is that an electromagnetic system? And in your opinion, because we won't give your resume here, but you do have a background in electricity. In your opinion, is this a system where they can just aim it at any electrical circuit and turn it off? It's called the Scorpius system. The Israelis have it. I am very, very, this seems like a huge thing to me, big deal. I really want to hear what you've had to say about it. So Federalist, Anti-Federalist. Everyone wants to have a convention of the states and we'll fix this shit. Well, keep something in mind. 1789, the Articles of Confederation, not our original government coming out of the Revolutionary War, not the Confederate government of the Civil War, wasn't working in most people's mind. Why they didn't think it was working, it seemed to be doing fine to me, but they wanted to raise more money and some other stuff. I think all the states were still issuing their own money at this point and kind of going their own way in every which way. And all the states were supposed to be giving money to the federal government to support it, and all the states were like, no. So the federal government had zero money, and so they say, you know what? We're just gonna have a little convention of the states. Tim says that's not a simple yes/no answer. I was afraid you were going to say that. Let me say this. It makes sense that you were going to say that. I wasn't afraid you were going to say that, but now that you say it, yeah, it makes sense that you need way more information. Can you have an idea what they mean when they say electromagnetic system? They say, okay, we need to tweak this system around the edges a little bit. We need to figure out, some way for the federal government to support the Navy and have a little bit better revenue raising. So, Convention of the States, you guys send some delegates. Let's fix some stuff around the edges here. And so the states send these delegates, and they completely blow up the whole system and make a whole new system. They weren't supposed to come up with a constitution. They weren't supposed to change our system of government. None of this was supposed to happen. They were just supposed to figure out some fundraising issues here around the edges. And that was a convention of states. And the Constitution comes out of that convention of states. Now, the aside, before we get to Federalist, Anti-Federalist, the aside is, do you really want to call a convention of states where anything can come out of it? It is not a guarantee that the good guys win. I mean, look how frequently we vote for idiots who do the exact opposite. Jack, still a Marine, still unvaxxed. Well done, sir. Hoorah, Semper Fi, death, kill. Improvise, adapt, and overcome. That makes me very proud to hear, young man. Where was I? Anything can come out of that convention of states. It might not fix anything. It could change everything. There's no limits on what a convention of states can do. I'm missing Tim. If you've answered, I'll catch up here in a minute. I tell you what. I'm sorry, everyone. I'm going to lose all these good comments, but let me get caught up on the chat. Okay. Anyway, that's an aside. So, all these, they come out with this Constitution now, and now they've got to sell it to everybody. And you're familiar with the Federalist Papers. John Adams. Oh, I'm going to forget now. Dadgummit. Alexander Hamilton and one other guy wrote a bunch of papers called the Federalist Papers, pushing for the adoption of the Constitution. It needed to be ratified by 2/3 of the states for it to go into effect. And the last state didn't ratify it till not that long ago, 40, 50 years ago. But hey, William Stanley's here. He says microelectronic circuits chips are the most vulnerable. Such chips are in lots of electronics, including those that are in modern cars. Yeah, Jack, we are very proud of you. Where was I at? So they write all these papers and send them they write these articles and send them to the papers, and later on they get collected into one volume and get called the Federalist Papers, and they were pushing for the adoption of the Constitution. There were the anti-federalists now, and this includes Patrick Henry, Thomas Jeff. Oh, Buddy Bear's here. Hey, Buddy Bear. Thomas Jefferson and Patrick Henry really stick out in my mind. And I'm sure there were others, but those two. Hey, Rat Rout's here too. And their thing was that, now some of them just felt like the Constitution gave the North too much power, because the North was where all the financiers were, and once the federal government could take on debt and borrow money and level these taxes, they all knew that money now would be flowing through New York and Boston and enriching all those people up there, and that's in fact what happened. And a lot of those. What's the right word? I want to be careful about my word here. A lot of that came back in the Civil War. Unfortunately, the South was completely wrong, and here I am, a proud son of the New South, but, man stealing is a sin punishable by death in God's economy. So we were completely wrong, and everything we did then at that point failed. But it's a shame, because we were wrong about that, the important big thing. We were right about everything else, but we were so egregiously wrong on the slavery issue that, God had to slap us. But anyway, the Anti-Federalists said, here's the problem with the Constitution, and they ended up being right. What they said was that, okay, so the Constitution was always intended to put limits on the federal and state governments, and there's even a clause in the powers that aren't specifically given to the federal government is reserved to the people. And I can't remember where the states fit in there. I'd have to look up the text again. But the whole point of the Constitution, from the Federalist point of view, is that this is a limit on government. That we're going to give government this power. We're going to consolidate the federal government. We're going to give it a little bit more power. But this is, this little box is all it can do. It can't get out of this box. And what the Anti-Federalists said was, yeah, that's what you say right now, but what will happen is the same thing that happened in England, and they referenced England, that will get turned around, and that box will be then used to box in the people, and the federal government will just do whatever the hell it wants. And that's exactly what happened. They were right every step of the way. What the Anti-Federalists said, I'm not saying our Constitution isn't a brilliant document. It is a brilliant document. And I'm not even going to say that it was, hey, C103's here. I didn't see his comment, but then Buddy Bear said hi to him. I hope you and yours are well, C103. Maybe the whole system falls apart a lot quicker without No, tactical homestead, you're right. The Civil War was not just about slavery, but we got to remember, you know, the Articles of Secession, I think is what they were called. I might have that term wrong. But the document that the South, you know, ratified when it seceded referenced slavery 38 times. We can't act like it didn't matter. That's why now there was a huge anti-slavery sentiment in the South, and I've read things about there were these regiment they would raise up whole regiment or companies or battalions, I can't remember, company, battalion, or regiment, and they would raise up these battalions or these units based off of, are you anti-slavery? You know, you can only join this unit if you're anti-slavery, because, you know, poor white people hated slavery. I'm not saying they weren't racist. I'm saying they hated slavery from an economic standpoint because it was cheap labor and that they couldn't overcome. And the whole value of labor was debased. And you know, rich people, rather than hire a freeman to do a high-skilled job, they would buy a slave who could do that high-skilled job, because they could keep all of the increase from that high-skilled labor, rather than having to pay, you know, the high-skilled freeman what you know, then, you know, that work brings in more, you know, I'm just picking something, you know, blacksmith. You know, blacksmiths is a high-skill trade. They get to charge extra money for that trade. So rather than pay a free blacksmith, you're going to go buy yourself a blacksmith so that you can keep that increase. So I'm not saying white Southerners didn't have a racist bone in their body, but they hated slavery from an economic standpoint. The poor ones do. There's an interesting, if you ever go to Cades Cove, yeah, Appalachia was mostly anti-slavery. And if you go to Cades Cove in Tennessee, in Appalachia, you know, as you take the tour through the old Cades Cove, they talk about how, you know, the place split down the middle over the Civil War because, you know, there were anti-slavery segments of the society just didn't want to. Yeah, now they just hire illegals. Same thing. It really is the same concept. It is devaluing, debasing the value of labor. And actually, the first split in the Baptist church. Sometimes, if you're running around out in the country, you'll run across a church called, the denomination is called Primitive Baptist, and then there's a denomination called Missionary Baptist. And frequently, if you see a Primitive Baptist church, there'll be a Missionary Baptist church somewhere nearby, and they split over slavery. That the Primitive Baptists didn't want to do any evangelization of Indians or black people, and the Missionary Baptists did. And so the Missionary Baptists tended to be anti-slavery, and the Primitive Baptists tended to be, you know, racist assholes. Anywho, all of that's too nuanced for the modern zeitgeist. You know, you just gotta say slavery bad, and slavery is bad. You know, man stealing, like I said, is a sin punishable by death in God's economy. Okay. Yes, the Republican Party platform was anti-slavery at the outset, although at the outset, no northern states actually outlawed slavery. There were still slaves in like Massachusetts and everything up until I think 1830. And interestingly enough, like up until the 1830s, freed black people could vote in North Carolina. I just found this out this week. That our racial our racial relations didn't turn just like poisonously toxic until we got real close to the Civil War. But see, then they had to start justifying slavery off the basis of race, and that's when it went dead battery. Oh, we're losing Wes. And once they had to justify slavery off the basis of race, then you know, you had to be racist. But slavery was a horrible sin. All right, let's get off of the ugly stuff. Let's get back to some fun stuff. Okay, see folks, it's guys like Revolting Man that shoulder or will shoulder the burden of freedoms for millions. That's one of the nicest things that anyone's ever said to me, Olaf, thank you. So Walter Davis, we're going to talk about slavery one more time. Walter Davis is actually is right when he talks about most settlers of Appalachia came over as indentured servants, had a worse time than slaves, especially Irish indentured servants. And I have a little bit of an Irish background, not much, because indentured servants, they only had you for 7 years. So they had, paid for you to come over. They'd actually bought you. You come over as an indentured servant, and then you go up to an auction at the same place where the slave auctions were at, is my understanding. And then they would bid on you for a period of labor for 7 years. Well, they owned the slave forever. Yeah, Tactical Homestead, feel free to go ahead and drop that link to your channel. You own a slave forever. You've got the rest of his life to recoup your money. That indentured servant, you've only got 7 years and he's gone. And you know what? It's like a rental. You talk about drive it like a rental. Well, they worked them like an indentured servant, and it was awful. Especially Irish women. Irish women got a very, very, very bad deal. The Roman Republic could not survive the huge influx of slaves. It gave too much power to the Roman generals and bankrupted the farmers. Completely bankrupted. Isaac's just a redneck Baptist. Yeah, slavery is an unnatural economic system. I would like to hear more about the BOF and what you would consider your standard carry or loadout for that setup, freedom seed requirements, etc. Okay, so the BOF is for an element of a fire team. It replaces the SAW and also brings the capability of a DMR to the fire team. I don't know exactly how. I've been thinking here lately that maybe a 4-man fire team needs 2 BOFs. It might not be a bad idea to have 4 BOFs, right? If one's good, 4's better. I want reparations now. Oh, McMikey. Oh yeah, look, McMikey. Look at this. What happened to the Irish, the indentured Irish? It was rough. You'll be angry. So this isn't a fully developed system at this point, the BOF. Why is we got a Slavic brother in the house. The Slavic brothers, they have stood up for freedom themselves too a lot over the millennia. Okay, so we have a Slavic brother in the house. So, but this isn't, and because I can't pronounce your name, I might just say Slavic brother. So this isn't a fully formed system yet. It needs, I need other people to get buy-in and other people to start coming up with best practices. As I see it now, though, the BOF gunner needs extra ammunition. If a combat load is 210 rounds, I think the BOF gunner is going to need at least 400, right? Because you're laying down a volume of fire. I personally am of the opinion that we should probably all have our zeros set for M855 green tip. I think 55 grain SS109s, or no, SS109 is the M855. I can't remember what the 55 grains were called. 193s, XM193, I don't remember. I think the 55 grain is actually a superior round for most of us. But the 62 grain green tip is what we're going to run into the most. So our zero probably needs to be set for that. Okay, am I a prepper? Okay, hold on a second, am I a prepper? I'll get there. If I forget, ask that again. I don't know why my chat isn't keeping up. So that's it. Now I don't advocate pistol loadouts when you have your rifle. You don't need your pistol when you have your rifle. That people don't like it when I say that. Everyone likes that SEAL Team 6, yeah, and it looks cool as shit. But the vast majority of us will be better served with our rifle. And rather than the weight of carrying a pistol, we would be better served with carrying more ammo for our rifle. Pistols have a very, very limited application. You have to stay way up on your training. There's almost very few situations where you're better served to use your pistol if you've already got a rifle. There are some. And that, and if you're in close quarters and you need to reload, I understand that it's faster to drop your rifle and get your pistol than it is to reload. But I mean, we're talking 25 yards right up there on them. I don't know. So I don't advocate for pistol carries for the militia use. So other than that, it would just be increased ammo and your regular militia loadout, your regular infantry loadout. XM193 is better for dumping energy into the target with fragmenting and such. 62 grain M8 has better penetration for war. Yeah, and I think the reason they went to the 62 grain, because it's kind of a wash. You know, the advantages of the 55 grain versus 62 grain is kind of like what you want. But the 62 grain was a bigger bullet, so you could get more specialty rounds in there. You know, white phosphorus, tracer rounds, that sort of thing. And I think they were saying, oh, well, it'll just be a little more effective for those specialty rounds. You're not going to go wrong with either one. I think the 55 grain is probably better for most of us because it's got, you know, more velocity, slightly flatter trajectory, slightly. It's not going to be much, but you know, that's just going to make it a little bit easier to make hits at ranges. But the 62 grain is more ubiquitous, so we need to be zeroed for that. All right, tunnel rats in Nam use pistols too. I see that, yeah. Okay, how important was it to have that long 24-inch barrel on the BOF as opposed to a 16-inch? I think, I won't go so far as to say it's critical, but I think it's extremely important. The 5.56 is a velocity-dependent round. It's this tiny little bullet. It's narrow, it's 22 caliber, it's short, and it's light. It has to have velocity to make it effective. And when you give up barrel inches, you give up velocity. Also, this isn't a one-to-one situation. You can't say because a barrel is 1 inch longer, it's X amount more accurate. But a longer barrel tends to be more accurate, but also that longer barrel, when you're on the volume of fire mode, when you're doing that echo mode and you're dumping a lot of rounds downrange, takes longer to heat up. So it's longer before you start having problems with malfunctions, basically, at the end of the day. Because on the volume of fire mode, the groups opening up don't really matter. But once, you know, heat is your enemy. So once it gets good and hot and you start having malfunctions, well, that takes longer to get to that point with the longer barrel because there's more mass to get heated. You know, it takes more to heat up that mass. Now, the flip side of that is it takes longer to cool down once you stop shooting. So, you know, everything's a give and a take. I think the long barrel is extremely important for a number of different reasons. If you look at one reason by itself, you might say, well, okay, so that's, you know, 3% on the margin. But once you've got, you know, 3 different categories that are 3% on the margin, now suddenly you're 9% better, and that's significant. So for your DMR mode, for having your round be more effective because of higher velocity, and I think the difference between the 24-inch barrel, and remember, I wanted a 26-inch barrel. The only reason I went with the 24 is because I wanted a 5.56 chamber, and all the 26-inch barrels I could find were the wild, or the 223 wild chamber, and I wanted the 5.56 chamber because it's a little wider, and again has less problems with fouling and malfunctions. So the difference between a 24-inch and a 16-inch in velocity is like, don't quote me on this. I'm going to get this. If I get this wrong, if we look this up later and I get this wrong, forgive me. I believe it's 300 to 400 feet per second. It is by no means an insignificant amount of velocity, especially when you're talking about a round. I might have to throw some wood on the fire. That is completely dependent on velocity to be effective. And then also, like I said, you know, a little more accurate and a little more. Ever thrown a darn 380 in your pocket? I don't care. Just at least have a backup gun for an up-close emergency, my advice. That's a completely fair opinion. Having put a lot of rounds through an AR-15 in chunks of time, in very adverse situations, I can tell you that if you take care of your rifle with just a modicum amount of care and expertise, you are not going to have malfunctions. Something will always happen, yes. But on, you know, per 1,000, you know, per 10,000, not per you. I have done things with an AR, with an M16, mostly obviously, that were eyebrow raising, and it still shot, and it still shot accurately. So, but I mean, I'm not going to tell you don't carry a backup. More guns, more better. More guns, more better. For me personally, that weight would be better invested in more ammunition or spare parts for my rifle. Because, that 380 is, it's what, 7 or 8 shots of get away, get away, get away, get away. And if you invested that same weight in more ammunition, now you've got what, a whole another magazine, probably, maybe 2 magazines. And now you've got 30, 60 rounds of holy shit, get out of my way, Anywho. And by the way, now this is for militia. Now, I'm not saying, your EDC, everyday carry. My EDC is a damn Jericho 9mm. I'm probably gonna have to, let me throw some wood in the fire real quick. I'm not saying don't carry pistols. I'm saying if you already have to carry a rifle, then the utility of the pistol is, what's the point, I should say, what's the point? I know what the point is. My question is, the advantages of more rifle ammunition versus the advantage of, an LCP, I think the advantages are higher. If you've got the weight to invest in something, you've got your loadout and you say to yourself, I can carry 2 more pounds. Do I want to invest that 2 pounds in an LCP and a spare magazine, or do I want to invest it in another magazine of 5.56? The choice I make at that point is 5.56. But I understand. Okay, look up Brent 03331. Is that supposed to be just 2 3s? Is that supposed to be 0331? I bet it's supposed to be Brent 0331, not 033331. 0331 is the a machine gunner MOS in the Marine Corps. I could be wrong though. Lance Corporal Veteran would know that would be the, yeah. Lance Corporal Veteran, clarify that for us, because I know you would recognize that MOS code and you wouldn't get that wrong. AR RPK by Klein Machining. So that's an upper to go on an AR lower that turns it into a belt fed, if I remember correctly. And it'll probably be piston driven. Timothy Young says, I got out of the Marines long ago and eyesight is shot. Me too. So what do you think of me just hiring gunmen, housing them and feeding them? I have 2 guest houses on my homestead. So here's my, if you have daughters, what you do is you marry them off to gunmen. Oh, Timothy says that's right, it's 0331. Here's the problem with hiring gunmen. And I can't remember what English wit who said it, but he said, hey, Chuck Norris is back. Once you've paid the Dane, the problem is, once you've paid the Dane Geld, you never get rid of the Dane. And the Dane Geld was this thing when the Geld was price in Old English. And all the Vikings were just called Danes, even though they weren't all Danes. But I think the ones that were harassing English the most were Danish. And so the Vikings would invade England, and then they'd say, all right, well, if you pay us X amount of money, we'll leave, and we won't harass you anymore this year. And that would be the Dane Geld. Well, the problem was you paid the Dane Geld, and they just came back the very next year and wanted another Dane Geld. I know you're being facetious, by the way, Timothy Young. You're not really talking about hiring gunmen, but the downside with hiring gunmen is that, oh, now they got the guns. And all they want from you is money. That's only going to end one way. But again, I know you were being facetious. Okay, Tactical Homestead is talking about something interesting. Isaac says, I have currently been carrying a Smith & Wesson Shield 9mm, downgraded from my GP 100 357 mag. That is a downgrade in firepower. It's not necessarily a downgrade, though. Two very different pistols for two very different things. All right, Tactical Homestead is talking ballistics. I'm going to go back up and see if I can figure out what the... Okay, I don't see what that was in reference to. Tactical Homestead, I'm sorry. Depends more on bullet weight and composition than barrel length. A 112 grain bonded boat tail soft point at 1,060 feet per second will put the hurt on you at close ranges versus 55 grain FMJ at 2980. Well, I don't disagree with that. You know, at close ranges, that 55 grain is going to just shoot right through you like a, you know, an ice pick and leave this little tiny hole, and it's probably not going to transfer much energy. So you are correct about that. MI Prepper asks, I was thinking if you did it, he's talking about the BOF, if you did it in 308, might be better against vehicles and cover. 100% agree. I still say resupply. You know, if you're successful at this, everyone always says, you can't count on battlefield pickups. Well, you can't count on it, but you sure as hell might need it. And if you're running around out there with a 308 and you've already blasted the 200 or 300 rounds you can carry, you know, maybe battlefield pickups aren't reliable, but they're at least possible. So that's why I still say, I agree 100%. AR-10 in 308 is a more lethal weapon than an AR-15 in 5.56. But 5.56 is what the oppressors will be carrying, and 5.56 is what we have to be able to shoot. But your base assumption is correct that the 308 is a much more effective bullet. Except that you can carry a lot more 5.56. And so one round of 308 does more damage than one round of 5.56. But does the one round of 5.56 do enough damage? Now, against vehicles and cover, it doesn't. Although, yeah, it's another long boring Marine Corps story. The 5.56 will still punch through 2 car doors. So I would still say that it, you know, 308 is obviously better, but 5.56 is good enough. And you can carry more of it. But the big issue is that that's what the oppressors will be carrying. Okay, Hunter Kirk is back too. Chuck Norris Gun Club is looking at land in Alaska. I think that's a really good idea. Especially you get way out in eastern Alaska, like right on the Canadian border. And that way when the American officials come over there and mess with you, they're like, what are you talking about? I'm Canadian. And when the Canadians come over there, you're like, oh, forget about it, you know, and see if you can't, you know, get both sides to leave you alone. The only question I have for, and you're like, forget about it. And I haven't spent much time up north. Forget about it. I'm gonna make you an offer you can't refuse. If the grand solar minimum is a thing, man, might not want to be in Alaska. And the anecdotal evidence to me right now is that it's a thing. This winter has been just bone-freezingly cold here. But boy, I would love to be in Alaska. I'd love to be way out in the middle of nowhere. You know, take a week to get out. I completely 100% sympathize with you. All of you know what the grand solar minimum is. I don't have to bore you with that. Chuck Norris bought land in Texas. Timothy says that Texas falls before Oklahoma, and I think you might be right, except our Mexican neighbors are proving to be quite open to being gun-loving conservatives. And if that is true, if we can convince 25% of Mexicans to be gun-loving conservatives, we won. We've got another 50, 60 years. If that's true, if we can convince 25% of Mexicans to be gun-loving conservatives, then we are in the darkest days of a trend this is liberalism's greatest moment for 2 or 3 generations, and it will. Isaac, we're talking about the Mexicans that are here in America and legal to vote right now. And there are signs, especially in Texas, that it is possible to convince Mexicans to be conservative. I mean, their values, their morals are very conservative, very pro-life. That works against us a little bit because the influence of the Catholic Church is, and the Catholic Church does not like guns. Hey, Mark Becker, how you doing? But there is a value system there that I think we could win those folks over. And if we could make that happen, if we could get 25% of Mexicans to buy into the Second Amendment, small government, or limited government, what I've read, and that's all this is just stuff I've read, Mexicans tend to value a limited social safety net. They like Medicaid, they like Medicare, they like unemployment benefits. And if you can convince them that you're not threatening the status quo in those areas, that you're not going to kick their grandma off of Medicaid, and this actually holds true for a lot of people, period, that then you can start talking to them about some of these other things, abortion, the homosexuality fallacy. Although you should be careful about saying the word phallus in connection with homosexuality. They might get the wrong impression of what you're talking about. And then we can start talking to them about our Second Amendment and why it's important and why the Second Amendment is a pro-life stance. MI Prepper he's right. M60 legal replacement if you did the BOF in 308. You're 100% right. And I would go so far as to say, where I'm at in my thinking right now on that stuff, MI Prepper, is I'm thinking about recreating the fire team in the squad, in the militia, and so the M60 or the 240 Golf are a medium machine. I think that's a medium machine gun. I think the SAW is a light machine gun, and I think the 240 and the M60 are medium machine. The medium machine gun is not an organic weapon to the fire team and the squad. Those are in the heavy weapons platoon. I don't even think they're organic to the company. I think they can be attached to the company. Someone correct me if I'm wrong. Hey, Carrie, thank you. We appreciate you. So maybe when I get to that point in my thinking, maybe then, it's something where we start saying, okay, this makes sense to add this element at this point. Right now, I've got to finish the fire team and the squad level stuff, and that means a replacement for the M203. That's what's next in my thinking. And maybe there is no replacement for the legal NFA legal replacement for the M203. Maybe it is we just have to get by with well-aimed, highly accurate fire. So yeah, there may be a time where we're like, okay, we're at the point where in our thinking, what do we replace the M60/240 with, and then yes, 100% BOF. And by the way, if you wanted to do a BOF in 308, I get it. Yeah, makes perfect sense to me. I'm on board. It just doesn't fit in with where I'm at in my thinking right now. New types of triggers. But I certainly see the place, and I certainly see the validity of your thought process. Okay, rifle needs an operator. Operator must sleep, eat, and shit. Yes. Let me catch up here. Would a 308 or 12 gauge with slugs be better against vehicles and cover? Can you compare and contrast? I read a really interesting article a very, very long time ago. Okay, well, you said cover, not concealment. Never mind, that article doesn't apply. That article was about concealment. Cover. So here's what I'm going to say. 12 gauge slugs are lead. Uh, I'm sure there's uh, exceptions, but I think the vast majority of the 12 gauge slugs you're going to find are lead or something similar. And I don't think they're going to do well against cover or vehicles. Uh, that's just my guess. But 308, it's just a higher velocity and a smaller profile. It's just going to punch better than a 12 gauge would. Maybe you could get like a Sabo. I'm sure there's 12 gauge Sabos. And mustache gets in between my lips. 12 gauge Sabos that would compete at short distances. If I had to say I'm taking a 308 or a 12 gauge, and one of the considerations is barrier penetration, then I'm taking the 308. Because the 308 does lots of more things well too, long range. Actually 308's obviously was a sniper round for decades. And then obviously it's going to do better on the barriers than the 12 gauge is. So I would say 308 if those are my options. But boy, man, if you get in some close quarters and you're running around corners where you're not knowing what's on the other side of the corner, 12 gauge is a wonderful thing to have. But I would want buckshot in that case. So if that was my main consideration, you're still not going to get great barrier penetration. I love the 30-06, but them is big. I love the 30-06 too. And to MI Prepper's point, the BARs are, you can still buy a Browning automatic rifle that is the basic guts of the BAR. And that is also a very compelling choice for that replacement for the M60. Obviously not ideal, but very, very compelling. If you're already, because does the UN still carry the 308, Walter Davis? I thought they had switched to. Every time I went on a UN mission back in the 90s, this was in the 90s, and I was on two UN missions, but one of those might have been NATO. I know one for sure was UN though, and they all had 5.56. Sorry. Where was I? Oh, yeah. Because your 308 BOF is probably box magazine fit anyway, so you're not losing a whole lot. That BAR would also be a very, very interesting. Again, a civilian. When y'all know what sporterizing is when you take a mil-serp gun and make it sort of more of a hunting rifle. I don't know what you would call the reverse of that process, taking a hunting rifle and making it more military applicable. Militarizing? It'd be militarizing. I don't know how hard or easy it would be to militarize a BAR, but I could also see that fitting into that same role. And 30-06 is a great round. I know it's a little weird. Okay, no blue counties in Oklahoma, and Californians can't stand Oklahoma. Well, that says a lot for it. Okay, Clancy Russell brings up an excellent point. Clancy says that I'm wrong about the ice pick thing. Earlier I'd said that if you shot someone with a 5.56 at close range, it'd be like an ice pick going straight through them. And he brings up, look at Kyle Rittenhouse. Let's keep that in mind. We're talking about things around the margin. A 5.56 at point blank range maybe isn't going to dump all of its energy, but it's going to dump enough. It's enough to kill a pedophile. And that's enough. All right, where are we at? Oh, Isaac is saying black tip 30x rounds are ideal for cover. I think black tip is armor piercing, isn't it? What do I think of drones for SHTF? I think they're a wonderful thing if you can pull it off. drone capability is just the best. Now, the drones that we can have access to have to be registered with the FAA, and I'm pretty sure that means they can shut them off. That, you know, they know the frequencies, they communicate